We are back finally with another edition of Coffee Talk. My co-host, as always, is Phil, and uh, I'm here with the one mug to rule them all. And
until a couple of hobbits snatch it from you and chuck it into the nearest volcano.
that keeps happening. That's the third one. I'm hoping it sticks this time.
Well, you're down south too, so literally they could just throw it anywhere and
Literally, just walk out my door, just chunk it. Yeah.
Where are we going to find a volcano? Over there's fine.
Oh yeah, in that parking lot. Pick any crevice. Yeah. All of the crevices down here glow, just automatically. That's what it is. All right. So today's episode is about probably one of my favorite, easily top 10 favorite films. And in my opinion, one of the better early 2000s films as far as thriller. What would you even call this? What is this labeled exactly?
Well, actually, I was having a conversation about genres with a writing client of mine, someone who I did some editing for. I would classify Constantine as a fantasy. Many people, when they think fantasy, think sword and sorcery, and that's like high fantasy, like Tolkien-esque. Anything derivative of Tolkien, I would classify as high fantasy. Even Krull would be a high fantasy film, even though it has science fiction elements. So Constantine, because it involves the supernatural, is a fantasy. And any film involving, it's a fantasy that flirts with horror because there are some horror elements. Its purpose is not to gross you out. So horror for its own sake is meant to be gross and unsettling.
Yeah.
And that's the difference.
Okay.
Which is not, I'm not bagging on the horror genre. It's just there's a distinct difference between Friday the 13th or Jeepers Creepers and something like this, which has horrific elements, but that's not the point.
Right. Yeah. And one of the things I love about this stylistically, or I guess in cadence wise with this film, that's one of the things I love about it, is that we'll have this intensely personal moment, usually followed by this intense, abrupt action sequence or something kind of horrifying that kind of frightens you. And it has that cadence throughout literally the entire film until the credits roll, pretty much. And very unique.
If you were to plot the pace of the action, not only is it going up and down, but it's trending upward until it gets to the climax of the film and then falls off. And then there's kind of a denouement that, if you, unlike me, if you stick around for the credits, there's even a little bit more of a denouement after the credits. The first time I ever saw Constantine, I had no idea that credit scene existed. And it's actually quite important to the film.
Which, if you don't see that, you're talking about Shia LaBeouf being
right. So if anyone who hasn't seen the film by now, you've had
spoilers, sorry.
Well, they've had 20 years to see the movie.
Yeah, come on.
I mean, among other things, this film, it's Shia LaBeouf when he was still tolerable as a human being, which is not to say that he's not a good actor, because he is. But I get the distinct impression that Shia LaBeouf in person as a person is absolutely somebody you'd not want to be around. If you got trapped in a broken elevator with Shia LaBeouf, sooner or later somebody's choking somebody else. It's not going to be pretty.
You're afraid he's going to shout at you, even if he's
because he became very sort of unstable and unpredictable as a person. And when he's in his performance art mode, he's his most obnoxious. That is peak obnoxious. He will not divide us, meme-tastic Shia LaBeouf. This was before all that, and he's so much more tolerable as a person. He comes off as likable, as hopeful. You want to like him, so we actually care what happens to him.
Yes. And
it's not a big role.
Yes. How do you interpret the final scene? Was he actually watching over John the whole way, or did he earn his wings, or was he a half-breed the entire time?
I have always interpreted that as, because he died in service to the forces of good, he was rewarded by being granted a set of wings. And so we're watching the moment where he ascends to heaven to go do his job, so to speak. That's how I interpret that scene. It never even occurred to me that maybe he was an angel the whole time, but I don't think so because it doesn't mesh with his personality. I think we're meant to see him as that hopeful, I want to be you character, which it's funny because in I find characters like that endearing in the same way that I loved Zero in, what was it, John Wick 3. This is not the same dynamic, but that's the same type of hopeful, when I grow up, I want to be like Constantine kind of character.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so they're both instances of people trying to be something they're not. The difference is Shia LaBeouf's character knows that he's not that yet. And in the case of the John Wick film, Zero thinks he's, well, deep down he knows he's not that, but he's trying to assert that to convince himself, which is why the character is both likable in an insecure sort of way, and we also enjoy seeing him defeated because, you know, anytime somebody like that gets what's coming to them, it's satisfying. And we talked about this in relation to that weird movie where Keanu Reeves cheats on his family
Oh
and
yeah. Yeah.
gets buried up to his neck in a scene right out of the first
Literally buried up to
movie.
his neck. Yeah.
Well, it's right out of Creep Show. It's like, that's odd, and the movie doesn't work, and it was a commercial failure if I remember correctly, because Keanu Reeves' likability comes through no matter what he's doing. So it's very hard to want to see him punished, which is to derive satisfaction from a character getting their comeuppance, no matter how richly the character deserves it. You have to find the actor dislikable so that you can enjoy their suffering. And Keanu Reeves is not like that.
No. And well, I like that, what you're saying as far as Shia, a lot better than what I thought was a possibility. I had this thought that maybe he was placed there to look after John kind of as a failsafe or whatever. But if John ever got it, because as smart as John is about and has a nose about, you know, because he has second sight in that way, he would have to put on the best, you know, he'd have to really hide himself to be that close to John.
Yeah, and I don't
have John
see
not know. And so my thought was, like, if John ever figured out, that way it's still a test, because if John ever realized that, well, I really have some backup here and I just didn't realize it, then John might be more reckless, and it wouldn't be a true test of John's character if he knew he had that help. But anyway,
and I've never seen it that way.
Yeah, what you're saying makes way more sense. And I like, because then that falls in line with what Keanu attempted to do, and there's that theme of self-sacrifice for the right reason. And John was almost admitted into heaven. If it wasn't for Peter Stormare, he would have, made it. But anyway.
Well, and I think this is easily one of Peter Stormare's best roles.
I agree.
He's clearly chewing the scenery deliberately every time he's on,
Yeah.
but he makes the devil unsettling in a way that, like, Al Pacino as the devil never managed. You know, the closest that the thing that I liked about Al Pacino as the devil in Devil's Advocate, which ironically another Keanu Reeves film, when they're on the subway and a mugger comes up to them and he's like, maybe you should put that blade where it belongs, and your cheating wife and her boyfriend, like that kind of omniscient knowledge used for evil. I loved that about his conception of Satan, but at no time did I find Al Pacino disturbing. And Peter Stormare, like, he seems like you wouldn't even want to touch him, like he would be unpleasant to the tactile senses. If you were to put your hand on his sleeve, it would be, you know, it would wiggle under your fingers, like, just ugh.
And I love the fact that he's wearing white, the white suit, the perfect white suit, but his feet are dripping this terrible gunk.
Yes, he's actually barefoot, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Which I think makes it worse. He's wearing this all white suit, like Panama Jack, and he's got bare, nasty feet, and it just makes him so perfectly unsettling. So it's a great interpretation of Satan, and I just like it.
Mm-hmm.
The weird Peter Stormare accent really works for it too, because, you know, like, what accent would Satan have? Who knows?
Yeah, whatever Peter Stormare is, that's what it would be. Okay, so on the title sequence, yes, there is a flaw. It's in the title sequence. The T and the I in Constantine are too far apart, just a little bit. That's the flaw.
Okay, the flaw in the movie Constantine is not the kerning of the title card. It's the fact that we start with plot mechanics, which is the whole MacGuffin of the spear and the guy finding it and all that stuff, which is not particularly compelling in and of itself. We should start with Constantine's exorcism and him and Shia LaBeouf doing their thing, and then see, because there's some time and space separating these events anyway. So it doesn't need to happen in the order that it's shown in the film. If someone's like writing a plot by numbers, then yes, I suppose they do it like in that order. But you shouldn't do it that way. You should grab the reader with how engaging Keanu Reeves is to start. And then we see the necessary plot mechanics and go through finding the MacGuffin and moving it from here to there and hither and yon. Because to me, that opening scene with Keanu Reeves and Shia LaBeouf and their interplay is much more interesting.
Well, it is, but and like, okay, here's why, and probably this wouldn't make a difference, but here's number one reason why I maybe disagree, I don't know, is that when he's walking out after he's finished and he sees that the possessed girl has drawn perfectly the spear and he pulls that off the wall. Okay, the audience has no idea. Then the audience sees that and it's like, uh-oh, okay, so these two things are connected to what is apparently a very important artifact in this film because it's the very first thing we see in the film.
Right.
And then if we don't have that, then you don't get that awesome quote at the beginning of the film about the Spear of Destiny and the fact that it's been missing since World War II. If you were to change that opening scene, move it after the exorcism, the opening exorcism where we meet John Constantine, do you think it would change the overall cadence and meaning of the film in any way?
It would be different, but I don't think it harms the film. Like it changes the emphasis slightly. So in the film director in my head, I'm picturing him taking the picture of the spear off the wall, and then we zoom in on the real life spear as our laborer friend finds it.
Oh, that would be good.
Yes. So you immediately get the same, oh, it's a real thing. And then he goes into his whole I'm possessed spiel. Because that to me is the least interesting part of the film, is the actual plot mechanics of the MacGuffin of Destiny, because it's literally the spear exists only to move us through the plot. It has no other purpose.
It's the thing by which it's integral though. It's not like, okay, here's, and I've read a lot of articles on MacGuffins trying to understand your world a little bit better. And I genuinely agree that the Maltese Falcon, for instance, is the MacGuffin of all MacGuffins, in my opinion. And that's a common, like, movies.
You have a fair point. The spear is important to what happens in the film, but
yeah,
maybe because I'm cynical about these things, anything involving the plot mechanics in this film to me is the least exciting part of anything that's going on. What I love are the character interplays. Like anytime he's arguing with angels or talking to Peter Stormare or even talking with Shia LaBeouf, the Catholic priest, I forget the name of the character now. That character actor, I believe,
Hennessy.
Yes, I believe the character actor himself has since passed away, but he was
Yes.
great. He was great in the role and in every role I've seen him in, some of them scummier than others. So I love that about this film. I am less interested in the mechanics of, we have to accomplish task A, B, and C in order to get to goal D, and just whatever, that's just me, I think, being cynical.
Yes, it is.
For instance, I watched Matrix 2 yesterday in 45 minutes because I wanted to see
forwarded past all the
right, because the only things about that film that I enjoy are the mansion fight and the freeway battle. And everything else to me is not interesting.
Okay.
And it's not because they're action sequences, it's because they're well done.
They are.
The single best moment of the film doesn't even involve Keanu Reeves. It's the moment where Morpheus with a samurai sword and a Glock 18 is fighting a Cadillac.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a flip and he hits the gas tank and yeah,
right.
yeah,
He's literally doing battle with a Cadillac Escalade, and that's the
yes.
best moment in the film.
You're not
Um,
you yeah. Just
so
everything about the all we're talking about a different film now, but all of those the shot placement and like where he's using the samurai sword, he inserts it on the side of the truck so that he can stand on it to get a better. I don't remember if is he
I
jumping off the
I
sword?
believe what he's doing is
I don't
just
remember.
destroying. He's using the sword because of movie physics to
No, no, no,
destroy
no.
the steering mechanism.
Yeah, no, not that. He uses it momentarily to get. He stands on it on the
Oh,
side
that's right.
of
Yeah,
the truck.
as a foothold. Yeah,
Yeah, but and they chose to put the camera up underneath that, so you have this wonderful shot, and you can see the hilt and everything. It's just all of the
yeah.
shot placement, amazing directorial choices on
I
that.
I could have forgiven the terrible plot line of Matrix 4 if it had included sequences like that. But sometime between the first three Matrix films and the fourth Matrix film, it's like whichever sibling is still around and whatever gender they're claiming to be now, that Wachowski forgot how to do the stuff that made all the Matrix films cool when they were cool. Because that type of choreography and music and tempo is completely missing from Matrix 4, which is a totally lackluster film in every way. They even brought back the Merovingian and some of his henchmen.
Okay,
And,
that was the one. Honestly, that was one of the few things that I really took issue with when I realized who that was under the beard. I'm like,
yeah,
and then that's all they do. Then they just scurry back into the darkness.
right.
It's
And I was excited for that. I'm like, yes,
yeah,
now we're finally going to get a cool kung fu fight scene.
exactly.
And we didn't.
Yeah.
Um, so I guess the point of all of that is uh
What's the point?
the point is plot mechanics don't necessarily make a movie. Sometimes they do,
Okay.
sometimes they don't. Sometimes the viewer's enjoyment of a film has nothing to do with the plot. And you're just watching them move from A to B to C. Yes, the spear is necessary to what's happening in the film. It's not just a MacGuffin, but it's still a MacGuffin in that the plot was built and built competently by someone who didn't just throw a Maltese Falcon in a briefcase and have people moving it around. It's not the briefcase in Pulp Fiction. There's a
Right.
reason for the spear to be in the
I
plot,
was
and
about to
it's a
say,
difference.
yeah. Okay, so
But
for the audience that, because most of you I know you don't know because I didn't know until last year sometime, a MacGuffin is an object just like the briefcase in Pulp Fiction or the briefcase in Ronin or whatever, by the very
yes,
movie, it's
what's in
like,
the case? We
what's in
never
the
find
case?
out.
I don't know, which
Yeah.
that's so often the case with a job like that. It's like, I don't ask questions, is how that goes. And then, of course, the Maltese Falcon, which I think is absolute top of the list for me. A MacGuffin, for those of you that don't know, it's something that we never really even see it. We don't find out what it is. It doesn't in itself hold any significance to the plot, and therefore, I'm sorry, the spear cannot be fully a MacGuffin because we see it. It's like the whole what it does, what it contains.
It depends on whether you hinge your definition on that it's otherwise useless. For instance, the diamond in Romancing the Stone is a MacGuffin, but it is highly desired by everyone. The reason the plot is moving is because everybody wants the thing, and it's a diamond, so clearly everybody wants the thing. And I would argue that just because the MacGuffin does things in the plot, it's still the engine driving the plot forward, because remove it and nothing's happening. Like if there's no spear, there's no plot. If
Well,
there's no diamond, there's no plot. If there's no briefcase with Ving Rhames' soul inside, it was actually just diamonds. But if it to me, MacGuffins can be more or less useful, but that doesn't mean that their fundamental function is what makes them MacGuffins, and that is that they push the plot along. I just find that so much less interesting than the fact that the demons don't have brains because they're mindless soldiers. Like the art construction of those creatures to me is far more significant than anything about the plot moving forward.
okay.
And the style of Constantine, one of the reasons I like the film is, I don't know, it's not art direction, but it's the aesthetic of the film.
Yes.
So we were talking before about props and about the fact that I have several of these
Yes.
Constantine lighter prop, which is an oversized shell into which a standard Zippo internal unit has been inserted so that
Yes.
it could be a fully functional prop, and yet it's much bigger. That makes it more visible on camera too. It's much bigger than a normal lighter would be.
Yes.
Um, and
And
I may
tell us about, if you would, the guy and the story about how you came by this and all.
Well, there's a prop maker who lives in the Netherlands from whom I purchased a fully screen accurate brass replica of the lighter. And before that, I had purchased from him a resin replica that, of course, you couldn't use as a lighter because the outer shell was made of resin. I believe I sold that to finance the purchase of the brass replica, which was completely screen accurate in every way. The one that I'm holding in my hand, especially if you're listening to this and not watching it, actually says Constantine on top of the lighter, because the Chinese knockoff factory that created it, I guess, wanted to just be that much more obnoxious about it because they didn't have the license to the film, much less to the logo. This is sort of accurate. It's if you're a prop maker, you can see how sloppy it is from a mile away. But I keep this one on my desk and I keep the real one under glass in a display
Yeah.
case.
His real
Um,
one is locked away, and he
yeah,
would never put
but
it out to us, but that's okay.
people forget there are also the Constantine brass knuckles that have
Yeah.
the same aesthetic, the same religious iconography built into them. And those knuckles, there are copies of those floating around, some of them at almost like 0.8 standard size. So it looks like it would fit your hand and it doesn't. So to get a quality reproduction of those is very difficult. And I don't own one because it's not legal for me here anyway, but I read extensively about how hard it is to get your hands on the Constantine knuckles and on replicas that are the right size and shape and detail. And somewhere along the way, someone started producing smaller replicas that they would fit an Asian person's hand, the average Asian person. Maybe that's why, because they were made in a factory somewhere in China, but they certainly wouldn't fit my ham hands. And most, the average person would have trouble with them
Yeah.
because I have fat hands. I wear a size extra large glove. And that means most commercial knuckles don't fit me anyway.
Yeah.
Um,
And even if the holes were the right size, the space, there's a lot of space between the stalls, and that is incredibly uncomfortable. You want the
well,
walls
yeah,
of the
because you
stalls
don't
to
want to
be
splay
very
your
clean.
fingers
Yeah.
when you're punching. And then, of course, that brings us to the mechanics of holding the standoff in your palm. I actually have a prop pair of brass knuckles. It's a flexible prop that I bought from a movie house specifically to write articles about and take photos of, because I can own that legally.
Right. Yeah.
So I have rubber nunchucks too that look real but are made of flexible rubber. I don't know as I'd want to get beaten with those, but they're legal because they're not real and they're not, because New York has laws about not just nunchucks specifically, but about clubs and brass knuckles and things like that. So Constantine's props, the lighter especially, I probably started collecting Zippo lighters because of my love for the Constantine Zippo. And
Really.
Constantine's not my favorite movie, but this is my favorite movie prop because it is a functional thing that anyone could get or
Yeah.
have, theoretically at least. I only recently became aware of these cheap Chinese copies. I even told the guy who I got the real one from, "Hey, are you aware?" And he's like, "Yes, I know." And he wasn't impressed
Yeah.
because they're just not as good as his work. But I love stuff like that. And
Yeah.
I don't know why I like Zippos so much, but the Constantine Zippo to me is the best of all movie prop worlds. And I enjoy Zippo lighters that have the logos from other fictional companies. So like if it's
Yeah.
an evil corporation in a movie, I want that logo on a lighter.
Okay.
But to me, it's a movie not about the action sequences, not even about the vision of hell that we get, because it's really, as visions of hell go, it's not that scary. Um, there's lots of different ways to conceptualize hell. And to me, Constantine's version of hell, it's very windy and doesn't seem like it would be a lot of fun to walk in, but it doesn't scare me that much. The version of like hell as a giant maze in Hellraiser, like 2
Oh yeah, yeah,
was scarier to me, especially the way they did the music and atmosphere.
sure.
There's a series of
It's
books
like
called,
I walk out in the Constantine version of that every day in
yeah,
the
it's
summer.
like
It's,
this is just the South.
yes,
So there's a series of books called City Infernal by, I think his name is Edward Lee, if I remember correctly. And his version of hell in novel form is very unsettling and disturbing. And you'd be terrified every moment you were there if you were some interloper in hell who wasn't actually a resident thereof. And to me, the Constantine version of hell, I'm like, yeah, it seems like it'd be a pain to get anywhere. Oh no, look, demons, but it doesn't chill you. It's fine. It's not, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just not that scary. So what I think Constantine really truly is a series of character studies as John interacts with different characters. My girlfriend has a replica sign that I made for her. It says, "You can get in if you can get in."
oh, I love that. Yeah,
Yeah, and I had that made from some vendor on Amazon for her because she liked that saying so much. Whenever Constantine is interacting with these various people, and we're seeing this underworld of, the hidden world that takes place where most people don't notice, that's where the movie is its best to me.
yeah. One of my favorite sequences in any film, period, for atmospheric reasons, character reasons, and it almost rivals the club in John Wick 1 is Papa Midnight's place.
Yeah,
Man, just yeah. And there's an added layer to it. It's not just like you have to check into the Continental and you have to have the coin and you have to be recognized as a member of this thing. But if you don't have some kind of second sight, I mean, I guess you could get into, if you can get in, you might just be a some kind of, yeah, you can tell what's on the back of a card in theory. That's all you got to do. But then you might, get eaten or something once you get in there. So you
yeah,
gotta,
it's the most exclusive of exclusivities because
yeah,
you
mhm,
literally cannot just join. You
yeah,
either are or aren't.
or
And for the people
yeah,
who aren't but want to be, it's now excruciating
yeah,
because not only can you not get in, but depending on your makeup as a being, you may
mhm,
never be able to, no matter how much you want to. No amount of hard work is going to get you in there if you don't have the innate thing that you must have. It's like saying this club is only for people of a certain race. If you're not that race, you can't get in. Well, of course, that's excruciating for the excluded group because they're telling you not only can you not be part of this, and all humans want to belong, but you'll never belong to this no matter what you do. So I think it plays on generations of human beings wanting to belong and being upset about being excluded.
so something I had every time I see, there's another thing I love about this film. Every time I see it, I see something I didn't the last time. And something I noticed is that there's a cadence with his cigarettes as far as, okay, I'm done with the taxi. The first time we see him is his hand out of the taxi. Okay, I'm done with that. All right, let's do this. And he begins a cigarette every time he's about to do a new thing, whatever it is. And by the way, when he's first going into the exorcism, and Hennessy comes out of from behind a pole or something, and right as John is walking up to the elevator and the elevator cage closes, there's a little TV, and it's a cartoon, and a billowing cloud of smoke goes up into a door, and a door shuts behind it at the same time that the elevator closes. So there's like all these tiny little, just really amazing on that aspect. But anyway, cigarettes. Okay, I think I did a post about this. So he gets to the girl's room, and I love how he sets the cigarette on the very edge of her counter, indicating that, yeah, I can handle this before that thing burns out. And also, I can do it. He's confident he can do it gently enough that it won't knock that cigarette off.
Right.
Of course, that wasn't what happened, that's so the case with, if you're going to do a good deed, like he says, there's always a catch. It's like, and it often turns into something way bigger than you wanted it to. But it's, to me, it was lightly a symbol of, I'm putting my vice aside. I'm setting myself aside for a minute to do this. And he gets it, and of course, it's burned out, you know. But there's a hang on. I had a note about this.
I believe Keanu Reeves is not a smoker in real life,
No.
and it's painfully obvious throughout the film
Yeah.
because you can tell he doesn't, people who've been smokers for a long time, they do it without even thinking about it. That's one of the reasons they have to keep their hands busy when they try to quit, because they'll start putting a cigarette in their mouth without consciously thinking about it. You can tell the whole time that Keanu Reeves is pretending to smoke that he's doing just that. And I know that sometimes actors will use herbal cigarettes, which I don't know if you inhale those or not. Most of the time you can tell someone is pretending to smoke because they pull the smoke in, they pause, and then they blow it right back out again. And the texture has not changed because they're not actually processing it through their lungs. When a guy pulls in a long drag and then blows it out his nose like Mel Gibson, you know you're dealing with a veteran smoker.
That guy has smoked. Yeah,
Yes, yes. There's when Mel Gibson smokes, you know it's because he wanted to.
you're right.
And I don't fault Keanu Reeves for
It's
that.
like that. His character didn't even smoke. He added that in.
Right. It's like, no, I'm going to have to be smoking. We're going to be filming this, so just let me do it. So it's one of those things that I notice only because it's a little unnatural. And with Constantine, like you either can have Keanu Reeves or you can have a guy who smokes. And since one doesn't, and it doesn't matter who else you pick, and that's who you want. So the other complaint I might have about the film in terms of Keanu's portrayal is that he was very young when this film was made. To me, Keanu now is more the age that I picture a John Constantine, a lot more weathered. And he was so young when this film was made, so fresh-faced. And obviously, I can't fault him for that either, because otherwise the film wouldn't exist at all. But the actor that they got to play Constantine on the CW series, the fellow in the Netherlands I mentioned who makes those replica props, he actually made prop lighters for the CW character. And if I remember correctly, he also made some prop lighters for the Preacher series that it wasn't the CW, it was FX Network.
Okay. I don't know.
That's also based on a graphic novel series.
Okay.
It's the lighter says like F communism or something like that.
Okay.
And I say it that way because there's a strategically placed blemish for television purposes, so you don't have the F bomb in the middle of your television broadcast. So the actor, and I don't remember the actor's name, but to me he was just a little older, a little more rumpled, and to me that's Constantine. Constantine is the quintessential sort of wrinkled, rumpled detective who just happens to deal with the supernatural.
So there's this scene where Angela is confessing to Father Patrick about she had to kill another guy in self-defense, and I don't know if it's in that moment or later, she's talking to herself outside of confession, but she's like, how do I always know where these guys are, where to aim, where to pull the trigger? And she's feeling really terrible. Oh, it is with Father Patrick, because then he says, God has a plan for all of us, Angela. And anyway, we later find out that she was highly psychic in the terms of being able to see these denizens of the just right there, but we can't quite see them.
Yeah.
And then she suppressed it. Well, something that I genuinely think happens is that if you do that, your sensitivity, there's no real way to do that. I think your sensitivity will find another avenue, and you'll have to do that. You have to deal with it in some way. And I think in her case, it came forth in a self-preservation way like that, which turned out to be very handy, of course. But anyway, I was wondering if you had seen that any other time in a film, or if you could relate that to anything in your dichotomy. To me, that was a representation of that I think is something that very much does happen.
I guess, I mean, the concept of repressing and compensating. It's like when you squeeze one of those strength and it has to go somewhere.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yes. Yeah. Am I lagging?
So I think we're in like a little bit, but that's just life for us now. We live here in this time of lag and internet vagary. There is, Father, could I have some more bandwidth, please? This is just this Dickensian reality we occupy where there's never enough bandwidth to go around. But no, I think that
That's
what you're
better.
seeing is just it's human condition. It's everybody feels like they have to compensate for or are repressing something or not cultivating something else. And there's just we I think we kid ourselves into believing that, well, if I'm not doing this one thing, it's coming out in another way. If I'm low on this skill, then I'm developing other skills. If I lose my sight, my hearing will become superhuman and I'll be practically daredevil. Like, I think that plays on a common human instinctual belief and desire that there's all this, I don't know, call it energy, call it whatever. We all have enough points, and if we lose points in one area, the points are going to find their way and we won't be able to stop them. And I don't know if that's actually true. I think sometimes people just have deficits and they
I'm
don't
talking more
ever.
about like there's a way that you genetically are, and in that sense, and that's literally what the movie is saying, is that some people have to deal with this, and unfortunately these two twins had to deal with
Right.
this.
It's the other side of you can get in if you can get in. You either have it or you don't.
Sure, yeah. Hey, there you go. And I think that to me that's what that was she suppressed that, the sight part, and being able and purposefully interacting with them, and she couldn't, you can't really stop it. It came out in this, but in a very fortunate way for her, it didn't interfere with her work, which I think is sometimes the case with sensitive folks, but it wound up saving her life. And anyway, I don't know where I was going with that, but okay, so
Well, is it this movie or another movie? There's a scene where a child who has the ability to see spirits is on the bus and he's seeing a monstrous visage in the form of a person sitting in a bus seat.
that's
And
when he's telling Angela about his childhood.
okay, wait,
Yeah.
that is from this movie. Okay, I was worried I was conflating a different movie with this one. To me, that's truly terrifying. The idea that you're seeing these things that other people can't, so you can't get external validation. You genuinely don't know if you're insane. You don't know what it is you're seeing. It's very real to you, and it's scary. And to me, it reminded me of The Sixth Sense, where the little boy is talking about the colonial hanging victims
Oh
that
yeah.
he's seeing.
Yeah.
Those were terrifying when I saw that movie for the first time. And that was before I added M. Night Shyamalan to the list of people that if I ever meet them, I want to punch in the face, because the first movie was great. And then he started inflicting films on us that were the opposite of great. And I just picture people
Like
coming
what?
up to M. Night. What's that?
Like what?
Signs, for example.
Oh
Is the
my gosh. Okay,
there,
I'm almost gonna hang up on you.
or The Happening is a terrible movie.
Well, The
And
Happening was disturbing, but
there, oh, he whatever directorial mojo he had, he lost after Unbreakable. And I got
I
so
used to
mad
love
one
that
day.
movie. That was a good movie.
I watched a movie. It's about a bunch of people trapped in an elevator, and one of them is Satan.
Oh,
And
Devil. Yeah.
yes, and when I get to the end of that movie and it says written by M. Night Shyamalan, I'm like, curse you, Shyamalan, you've tricked me, because I wouldn't have watched that movie if I knew he was involved. I've been holding a grudge ever since Signs, which I found to be just a terrible film. And I just picture him looking up from the ground after being punched and going, yeah, that's fair. That happens a lot, actually. That's for Signs. So,
Okay. Well, not just because it was a movie I grew up and was really excited to see, and then terrified of any anytime we had an expanse of you can't see right here and you can't see right here and there's a space right here, I was afraid that an alien was going to walk across.
Well,
That was
I'm
so
not saying
disturbing. But anyway,
there is powerful imagery in that film. I'm not saying there isn't.
so all the reasons that I really like even the fourth Matrix, like I see them as purely allegorical. Like parts may stink as a film, and like if you're just looking at it as like, oh, it's just a film, then you may indeed have a really good, and from a writing perspective, you got a point, undoubtedly. But if you frame it differently, I like it a lot, and those are the reasons that I like it. Well, I like Signs for a similar reason, and also just let's do an episode on Signs. I'm going to drag
like things. You can like things that are crap, though. I enjoy the Ice Pirates. It doesn't mean the Ice Pirates is a good film. It is actually a masterclass in how to make a bad film.
By the way, I did watch that. And it was I want that time back.
I told you it's not a good film. I said don't watch it because I mentioned it. It's not good.
I said I would though, so I had to.
But also, I enjoy the God's Not Dead movies. It's a guilty pleasure of mine. The reason it's a guilty pleasure is because I write for a living. And the writer in me recognizes how badly written those films are. Especially the first film, the character, the Kevin Sorbo character, who's the villain of the film, he has no redeeming qualities whatsoever. That's bad writing. The film would be much more interesting on a moral character study level if the villain had redeeming qualities but just hated God, which is the point of the film, is that Kevin Sorbo is a college professor who hates God. And it doesn't matter. The point is, I watched that movie, and while I enjoy the feeling of the film, I like the music and I like the way the characters are, and I like the pastor character who holds everything together, and he's in all three of those films. He's the guy that actually is behind the making of those movies. But the writer in me is like, oh my God, this is bad. Moral authority is what makes Constantine interesting, because for all its flaws, it's about the morality of, I did this thing. I tried to take my own life and now I'm damned. And so I'm trying desperately to redeem myself morally. That's the whole film. And then Peter Stormare tries to rob him of finally accomplishing the thing. Because when you know that heaven is real, you don't mind dying, because you're like, ooh, I finally got my ticket. I better use that ticket now or else I might not have it later. And so, yes, by the end of the film, John has a little bit of a moral dilemma, which is, how do I not mess this up? But they don't really dwell on that. It's more of Peter Stormare's moment. It's a way of saying there will be, what's that?
Well, first of all, you wouldn't have the thought process of, oh, I better use my ticket now, or whatever you just said, if you were being genuinely sacrificial. All you care about is that her sister goes home. And
he didn't know at the time. He doesn't know that he's redeeming himself until the door opens. Exactly. And then as he's ascending to heaven, he takes the time to flip off Peter Stormare. As final.
Yeah. I've been staring at this next. Now that I'm a little more calmed down after you said that Signs is a terrible movie.
Because it is.
No, it's not. Sometimes I wonder, it's like, how can we be the level of friend that we are and understand each other, and then there's these places where we just totally like, I'll tell you why it is later, why it's
the answer to your question is, the foundation of adult friendships is the ability to walk away from any interaction and think, well, that guy's wrong, and not let it bother you. The moment it starts to bother you that the people around you are wrong about stuff, and you go, I can't be friends with that guy because he's wrong about this thing.
I'm not, no. For me, it's that I just look at, it's like, maybe there's something about it. For instance, maybe there's something about that film that renders it terrible that I'm not aware of. And maybe there's something about that film that is really cool and makes it slightly redeemable that you're not aware of. And that's why I love talking.
Yeah, film is subjective. I mean, we're never going to agree on every movie. Film is as subjective as.
Well, no, I figured it out. The thing is that there's things that are important to me and there's things that are important to you.
Yeah.
And for
Well,
different, and we're all like that. And there's
it's
different.
exactly,
Yeah.
if you get any group of guys together and they start talking about the women they find attractive to date,
Oh, oh, oh,
they
yeah.
will they will disagree. Like two guys will look at the same beautiful woman and disagree on whether or not she's more or less attractive than the next one, because every person's subjective criteria are different. And you might say, well, yes, these are all, let's say you're looking at a gallery of beautiful women and these guys are ranking whom they prefer in some weird conference on who's attractive. Um,
Where is this? Yeah.
Everybody will be different
Yeah.
because they all have different standards, priorities, different things that just speak to them on a level they can't even articulate.
Yeah.
And some of that has to do with what you imprint on when you're young. There's so many factors. So movies in the same way, they are all beautiful or ugly based on completely subjective standards up to a point. There are certain things we can agree on that are just incompetent or badly executed. If a film is lit
Yeah.
by candlelight, as so many movies tend to be, and you're like, what am I looking at? It's so dark, I can't tell. I hate that.
Yeah, when you have to adjust the brightness of the TV, just turn all the lights in the house off to watch the
Well,
screen. Yeah.
modern streaming has made that problem worse too, because streaming services, for whatever reason, sometimes get the light balance of the stream wrong. So there are certain Netflix films that I can't even watch on my phone because
Yeah.
I just can't make it bright enough.
We are so far off. I'm gonna have to edit the hell out of this. Yeah,
Sorry.
that's okay. Um, no, the problem's not you. The problem is I take 1,000 stupid little notes that,
I know I'm always stymieing your note process.
that's I. So
Since it's so integral to the film, let's talk about suicide and the morality of suicide in Constantine. Um,
so there's this. Here's my general. You know how my morality works. Every little thing we do falls into serving self or others, including that to a degree. And so I think, like, if you're just giving up in a purely selfish way, or if you're escaping pain, like there's a very high number of re-diagnosed cancer victims that choose to do that. And I'm not, you can't really make a judgment, because I was like, and you think you know what you would do. I want to think that I would stick it out for every last breath. That's what I think, but I don't know that because I'm not any of these people. Um, but let's say it's silly, but you also know this about me. One of my favorite stories is that of Masada, historical tales. And for those of you that don't know, basically the Romans were going up to an encampment that was sat upon a mesa with a serious wall. They weren't great warriors, but they were all going to be enslaved by the Romans. They weren't going to be killed. They were going to be captured and put to work and tortured, etc., just for their enjoyment. Which that meant, by the way, that if these people fought the Romans, they'd just be overpowered and then captured. So it's not like they could die in battle. Rather than do this, they all committed mass suicide. And when the Romans finally breached that wall, all they found was silence and death. And so to me, that was, since it was the only option, and it was kind of the only option of resistance of that torture of your entire person and your people, and ultimately your soul, like to me, that's a worthy case of, that's a serving others ultimately method of committing suicide. So I never want to say that, oh, that's a purely selfish act. Only a coward would do that. Because maybe it isn't. It's like, what is the best thing in this situation for everyone involved? And I don't encourage it. And I like to say, you know, I always, when people are in that place, or I even think they might be in that place, because my life has been affected by suicide. I'll talk to you whenever for as long as you need me to, or listen, because as long as I am, you know. And it's like, yeah, today was terrible. Put it off. See what tomorrow brings. You can always do it later, but if you do it now, you can't take it back. And it's something I'm very sensitive to and about. But anyway, the reason I talk about my dichotomy of right and wrong is that I think that's in this film with the ultimate judgment sense of heaven and hell, which I don't particularly believe in.
Well,
But
there's
John, who and Angela's sister, who you might argue they took a selfish way out, but then John, upon killing himself in a sacrificial sense, to say literally to save the world in that moment, to stop time and to ensure that Angela's sister, because she was a victim of this whole thing that we watched, to ensure that she can go to heaven. He sacrificed his own soul. Jokes on the devil. John gets to go to heaven, even though he killed himself, because he did it for the right reason. It was an act of sacrifice, not of selfishness. And so that's one reason I like this portrayal of suicide in a film. Thoughts?
well, the movie has a morality, and then there's movie morality, and by that I mean the film uses a not really a Catholic structure, but a screenwriter's understanding of Catholic structure.
Yeah, you're
So
right.
the film is set up from a very Catholic standpoint. It has a set of rules, and the sister breaks one of those rules, so she goes to hell. It's that simple, and for no other reason. There's no real moral judgment. It's, oh, you got a traffic ticket, you committed suicide. You know, you did everything else
Pretty
fine.
much. Yeah.
So really, the Catholicism of the film is there to serve the plot. And like I said, the Catholic Church in movies is much more interesting than it is in real life, because the Catholic Church for centuries has been battling vampires and demons and every other thing, and sending forth secret occult warriors to do secret occult warrior stuff.
Van Helsing. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So there's that, but there's also movie morality. All movies have a morality that is usually not stated. If a character commits an unpardonable sin in the eyes of the audience, such as murdering his father, then he must die to atone for his sins by the end of the film, or Christmas is awkward. So when Kylo Ren kills Han Solo, and if you don't know this and it's a spoiler, where have you been?
Yeah.
When Kylo Ren kills Han Solo, it doesn't matter that by the end of this largely incoherent plot, after multiple directors have messed with it, by the time you get to the end of the third sequel film and he's been more or less redeemed and he has a hero moment, he still has to die, because otherwise you're rewarding a character who has done the unpardonable. A great example of that is Snowpiercer. The Chris Evans character has done he has done an unthinkable thing that haunts him to this day. No amount of heroism will redeem him until he dies for it, to redeem his character. So you'll see examples of that movie morality. Most films follow it. Most films follow that conventional movie morality. Occasionally you'll get a film that ignores it, and then you're like, the hell? And the greatest example of that, of violating movie morality, is actually from a television series. It's The Walking Dead. The character of Negan, played by Jeffrey Dean Morgan, was the most interesting character on the show, so he took over the show and ruined it through no fault of Jeffrey Dean Morgan's. And when he killed a beloved character in cold blood as his way of introducing himself to the show, that created a moral sin that can never be redeemed until Jeffrey Dean Morgan dies. So because they couldn't undo it, they just kind of had to roll with it. And it's been awkward ever since. They had to unkill all kinds of characters in the Fast and Furious series, specifically because to have them remain dead would create unpardonable sins that redeemed villain characters would then have to pay for. So they're like, we like Jason Statham. He's not a villain anymore. He's a good guy. Well, you're going to have to unkill Han then, because if he stays dead, Christmas is awkward. So what do? They unkill him because they don't have a choice.
Yeah. Okay. That's funny.
So
Right.
when I say movie morality, there's an internal moral mechanic that screenplay writing follows most of the time. And when
Yeah.
it doesn't, we notice, because suddenly things are awkward. So the movie morality of Constantine, it's totally in keeping with general sensibilities. He
Sure.
does something sacrificial without thought for himself. It redeems him, and as a result, the character in the screenplay gets to live, not because of what he did, but because Peter Stormare doesn't want him to go to heaven. It doesn't matter. We're happy because,
Ironically,
yeah,
yeah.
because John Constantine is alive. And then if you wait for the end credit scene, we get another example of movie morality. Shia LaBeouf, not a terribly effective person, but he was likable, gosh darn it, so he gets to be an angel.
Yeah.
You know?
I feel like when Peter got back to notice I call Lucifer, I identify him as Peter because I think really that's what's going on. Peter Stormare is the devil. So anyway, when Peter gets back to hell, I feel like a lot of people got fired. Say, how could y'all let this happen? Look at how far this went. Look at what almost happened. You are fired, sir. Yeah, I feel like,
And
yeah.
and of course he does it in the so many of you are fired
Yeah.
in that Peter Stormare accent that
Yeah.
is impossible to imitate because I can't really, it's just kind of a weird way of speaking.
Yeah. Like I love the feel that it's like an absentee landlord type of thing with heaven and hell. Like Lucifer has no idea what's going on. The only the only thing that brought him to earth, the only thing that got him out of his lazy boy was the fact that it was time to go pick up John Constantine.
Yes,
John
exactly.
was more important than his entire realm, evidently,
Mhm.
because John had to tell him about what his
Yeah,
dad
and
was doing. It's like, go figure.
that's the character study that I think makes the
Yeah.
movie interesting because we can all kind of relate to that. And the idea that these powerful entities are absentee landlords is one that it's an idea that's almost trite because it's been done to death. A running theme in Supernatural was that God simply didn't care
Yeah, talk
what was
about time for
happening.
death. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Um, I love one of my favorite supernatural moments is in an early season when they meet or Castiel bursts in. I think they're in a church or something, and Castiel shows up, and they're like, "Who are you?" And he goes, "I'm an angel of the Lord." And they look at each other and they're like, "No way, you don't exist!" And like, how sad is that that y'all have only dealt with demons and you're on the side of good,
Right.
but the forces of good were so absent as far as direct involvement that you had no.
Yes.
Yeah.
With everything they've seen, the idea that there was an angel was just, well, that's just crazy.
Yeah. And then of course he becomes a central character and one of my favorites probably. But
The,
anyway,
just as an aside, Misha Collins doing this voice for Castiel the whole time, because the character is there's a link here. The character is meant to be Constantine, from the overcoat to his
oh
mannerisms.
really?
The
Yeah,
character is a conscious
yeah.
nod to Constantine.
I
But
think
if you hear Misha Collins ever talking in an interview, he doesn't sound like this. He's
yeah,
just, hi, I'm Misha Collins, and we're on the set of Supernatural. And
yeah. He sounds like he looks like he should sound. Yeah.
yes, and so he made this weird commitment to doing that voice for the character, and I'm not sure why. I mean, actors have a logic to why they do what they do, and I couldn't tell you what his was, but
Yeah, so back to the cigarettes. These are in order of me watching the film. So um, I know he finished a cigarette when Midnight refuses the chair offer the first time he visits Midnight. It's like, okay, well, I guess we're done here. And he sticks around for a bit, but his purpose for being at Midnight's club, I need to use the chair. Midnight's like, it's like, okay, we're done with so the cigarettes are like intrinsically tied to the purpose of his visits, seemingly, and the core.
it's like an extension of body language.
Yeah, I guess so.
Like I'm opening up when I light the cigarette, I'm closing off when I discard it.
Sure. Yeah. Um, oh, the man, I am insanely analytical, but the bowl, he lives above the bowling alley, right? And it says bowl, bowl, bowl in neon. The L on the blue one is out. But anyway, it's red, blue, and yellow is the primary colors. And I kind of think of that like John exists not only is he able to perceive the real world, but he kind of exists in this above the real, what we see as the real world with our normal primary colors. And when you go up to his room, it's all monochromatic and like sepia. Everything has this, you know, and maybe that's just a good representation of John. It does kind of have a good film noir sense about it because of that filter, the monochromatic nature of it. And I love what they did with his flat, with the super heavy duty blinds that sounds like there's all kinds of gears and stuff going when he opens them, and the bottles of holy water surrounding everything. But anyway, I love his setup there. I wish we had seen more of that.
Yeah, it would be easy to get bogged down in that just because, you know, trappings of the profession.
Yeah. Oh, hey. This movie was not without a good, not a suit up scene or a gun shopping scene, but when Beeman walks in with the goods, you know, we get a little he knows a guy who knows a guy kind of scene. That was pretty good. And he tests the dragon's breath and all that.
Yeah.
Beeman's like the guy, you know. One of my favorite shots in the movie is after he doesn't kick Angela out. Oh yeah, he tries to kick Angela out of his apartment, but she just leaves in a huff. And then we see the shadows of the demons, and he knows, oh heck. And we see the shadows, and the camera goes around the room, all the way back around to his door, and we just barely see Constantine quickly leave. We see his arm go out the door, and the physics of that make no sense. Like he somehow closes the door telepathically or telekinetically or something. But anyway, that I love that shot in particular. And okay, this is the scene that I texted you and I told you, when the scene where John's telling Angela about the devil. Look behind her at the cage. Did you even watch it?
I did, but that scene did not jump out at me.
Okay, well anyway, we back up a little bit. So when he's talking to Angela about the devil, behind him, and this is in the category of stuff I see every time I see a little extra thing. There's on a garage door, I think, is a classic depiction of a morning star, which of course reference to Lucifer, and it's red, but it's just the quintessential four-pointed without the X on a bright blue background, indicating really hitting home the morning star motif. And right when he says, well, you should, he believes in you, he's standing, it's like right here, and we can see it real clear. And which that's one of my favorite talks. There's a lot of great dialogue in this movie.
There is. I'm partial to when he's arguing with the angel.
When he's seeking counsel, and he's like, who goes up, who goes down, and why? And he throws the book, that one.
Well, and she's just so delightfully androgynous and amoral,
yeah.
Which is everything you don't want in an angel.
Do the hand thing.
So you were saying about Tilda Swinton?
Right. Am I frozen?
No, you're good.
Okay, great. We're back. I like Tilda Swinton. I like Tilda in that role. Tilda Swinton was a great choice, I thought.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know the choice to make the angels androgynous. I don't know what we mapped that down to. I liked it. It worked well for this film. I think because there's something unsettling about her overall presence. And then by the end of the film, when she's lost her wings and she's begging, she's now pitiable, but also still unsettling. Because now you're dealing with a wounded animal that is pretending that it's not, and you're just waiting for something bad to happen.
Yeah. And she attempts to, what's the first thing she does? She doesn't want to, if she can't be an angel, she doesn't want to, it's like, go ahead, take my life, please take my life. Anyway,
Yeah.
um, nothing.
Which begs the question, what happens when you kill an immortal being that's now mortal? Like, what happens after that?
Yeah, I don't know. And like, were her wings the source of her, or was she just exposed to so much of
No, I,
hell? I don't know.
I think she loses her wings, which means she's not an angel anymore.
Which
So
implies
that's,
that the wings are the whole thing. Like,
well,
I thought her whole
not
person was.
necessarily. If you're an angel, you have wings, but when your wings get taken, your whole angelhood has been taken.
Oh,
So
wow.
like, so you're now, I would guess, just a person.
Yeah. Human. You don't deserve to be human.
You're right. So she's mortal now, and he could kill her, which means, like, does the regular cycle of heaven and hell now apply? Because she was like, if we use Shia LaBeouf's example, you can be a human, then die, then get promoted to angel. So let's say that same character was demoted from angel back to human. Now he's alive. So does that mean you could re-kill him and he'd go to heaven or hell? Like,
I don't
it
know.
raises some questions.
Yeah, that's interesting though. Okay, and you probably know this, but unless you played the original Xbox game, Constantine, uh, most people don't know this, that when John ignites that piece of cloth that kills all the demons, that was not the lighter doing the thing magically. That was a piece of the Shroud of Moses, and that's why I was able to do that.
Yeah. For some reason in my head, I thought it was a piece of the Shroud of Turin, but I guess it doesn't matter.
That would have been too mainstream. It
Yeah.
had to be more niche. Like, yeah. Okay, so the scene that I told you to look out for. Okay, so behind Angela, and the Catholics here do this too. I think I told you. There's Mary, and then to Angela's on one side of her, I don't remember. If you're looking at it, it's on her left, is a very thin cross that's sizable. And then on this side, very obviously, is a note or prayer that's been tied to the cage. Well, when they go to Angela's sister's room at the mental hospital, they're trying to figure out, uh, oh yeah, John's like, she must have left something behind, and they're trying to find it. Well, to Angela's left is that cross on the wall, and then to behind her is of course, on the window is the little message hidden in whatever light and breath or whatever they said.
Yeah.
And another common, this might have just been a directorial, like an element of physical closeness that Francis likes. I don't know if it was a nod to the final scene with Lucifer, but John gets right up. Hello, Mando. Everyone, this is Phil's cat that does not speak, and we don't know why.
He squeaks now. He makes
Oh, he,
little
oh,
noises. I was trying to bring him in, and he did not want to be part of the interview.
that's okay. I'm camera shy too. This is, I'm forcing myself to do this every time.
Really?
Yes, believe it or not. Yeah. And it's healthy for me, I suppose. So, oh, right. John gets like right up next to Angela right here in the same exact way that Lucifer gets right up next to John. And I don't know, I think that was probably just Francis Lawrence liked that physical closeness in these
Well,
scenes.
yeah, it creates intensity because we don't like it when people invade our space. It's exactly the same as the alien in Aliens, getting up next to Sigourney Weaver. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's that closeness. It's an icky intimacy in most cases, or it implies an intimacy in the case of Keanu and the actress Rachel Weisz.
I love the cat they chose with the pretty green eyes. That was the sound that cat makes is like the perfect sound. Be careful with that cat. Meow. It's like, do not close the door, lady. Okay.
Stop scratching me. Mando is now on a table next to my desk, and he's
Oh, okay.
me.
So Hennessy, um, this movie touches on a lot of really common thread and highly sensitive topics.
It does.
I had
I don't,
because I
I don't,
haven't dealt with some of them, I don't realize that. And so anyway, go ahead. What?
well, I don't think you can use Catholicism as your moral framework and deal with heavy issues of right and wrong and who goes to heaven and who goes to hell without touching on those
Yeah, you're
heavy
right.
issues.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. It's like, how else are we going to really examine that? Because it's about ultimate judgment and how silly. It's like, look at all the actual good that John has done. You know,
Right.
I
And
love the
and
way.
yet
Yeah,
he's fighting demons on a daily basis in order to achieve redemption for his one sin. Basically it's one thing.
yeah,
Like, doesn't matter what else you did, you broke the rule. So because of the one thing, it
yeah,
doesn't matter how many demons you fight. um it just, I find it unnerving.
yeah,
That one rule, it's just, I don't know, it's like, you can't, how about a little slack? I guess because I'd like to think that in real life zero tolerance policies don't apply. But uh
I think
Pruitt Taylor Vince, the guy who plays Father Hennessy, he himself is morally scarred.
that's
He's,
my that's what I arrived at. Okay, so alcoholism
yeah,
is what I was. That's a sensitive thing I wanted to get. Okay, so he's the picture of someone, and this is interesting. In contrast to Angela, and this is why I brought that up earlier. Angela, who suppressed her original manifestation of spiritual qualities and found a way to live in the real world, and those qualities came forth in a positive way to save her life multiple times. In contrast, Hennessy is smack in the middle of them. He's in tune with them, and he uses them to help when he can. And he's also a former priest, but he has to use substance rather than his own will to keep it under control. As he put, to keep the voices out, or to sleep. You got to sleep, John. And this is one of the best metaphorical and honestly scariest depictions. Talk about unsettling. The Easy Mart scene where the alcohol.
yeah,
That's one of the best metaphorical and scariest depictions in real time of substance related death and loss of control that I've ever seen. And also the idea that it can be used by an enemy to bring about your death, however you want to paint that, or if you even believe in those sorts of things, dear viewer. Which I guess it's irrelevant, because if you can conquer the thing that is possibly being used to snuff you out, then it's irrelevant, and you can't be harmed. But I think it's interesting that it doesn't matter how advanced you are, or capable, or knowledgeable you are compared to the average person. And Hennessy clearly was. He knew a lot of stuff. He was in the know. Or how well intentioned you are. It's our little problems that we think we're in control of. Uh, that's most often the thing that gets us.
yeah. On some fundamental level, we all are terrified of doing things that we're not aware that we're doing. So, his death scene where he poisons himself because he's not aware that he's doing it is terrifying for that reason. In the same way that, like, we all are a little leery of, like, getting anesthesia and then waking up and saying something that we would never say if we
Yeah.
were in full control of our faculties.
Yeah.
A friend of mine once had surgery and told me that when he was coming out of the anesthetic, he said some filthy things to the nurse. And the nurse, bless her heart, was just like, "Oh, I don't think my husband would be down for that." And, and he was mortified, but, and it's because we don't like to think that we're not in control or that we're not aware of what we're doing. And so it speaks to a fundamental human insecurity.
Man, I hadn't even thought of it that way. But yeah,
Well, that's why the average viewer is unsettled
that's
by
the
it.
cherry on top.
Yeah.
That's
As a metaphor for substance abuse more generally, it's, you have no control. You're not in
yeah.
control. And
And the
that's,
fact that the first time I saw it, all of these shocking parts were really shocking. For instance, that he's okay, so he wastes zero time. He realizes in that moment, that's what's terrible about it. He realizes in the moment what has happened to him
Yeah.
just before he dies. And he got the info that John needs, and that's why Balthazar killed him. But he's going to make sure John gets it anyway, even though he realizes, okay, so he wastes zero time and uses a mascara wand to put the symbol in his hand because he knows that at least John will find him at the morgue if they take all of his stuff, all his notes, his wallet, that's still going to be there, and John will come to the morgue. So the fact that he uses that tells me, yeah, he knows he's going to die, which means he's been almost to that point before, which is a class A representation of substance, is that typically people know, or they think they know, just how far they can go before it's, so he's almost been there before.
Well, and his knowledge of his death makes the scene sadder too. It gives more pathos because it's the same reason that people were discussing whether the folks in the Titan submarine knew for hours that they were going to die or just went kaboom and never knew it. Like their knowledge of their impending death makes it much worse. Same thing.
And which I was thinking about that. Okay, it's a mascara wand. It's blunt. It's a piece of metal. I don't know. Like, had it been any, like, okay, you give me a knife. If I'm in the same situation, you give me a knife, I can do that. We're just going to draw that. Okay, it's going to hurt, but I'm going to do it. You give me a ice pick or something singular that's pointy, I might can manage that. But you give me a mascara wand that's blunt, and I have this much space to do that with, and be accurate enough to do a symbol, I don't think I could do that, man.
It's like a Squid Game task at that point.
Yes, yeah, exactly. But the fate of the world is at stake.
Right.
So
speaking of Balthazar, was Gavin Rossdale like the lead singer of a band or something? Am I thinking of the same person?
Bush, yeah.
Okay, so he was just taking a moment to do a foray into acting?
It was, yeah.
Because he was good as Balthazar.
It was good.
He was palpably evil. I liked him in the role. It was only afterwards I'm like, why does the name Gavin Rossdale sound familiar?
Oh, really? Yeah. Gwen Stefani's ex-husband. Yeah.
Oh.
So pause here. Oh, we already covered a lot of this. And then, by the way, it's handy that you think things just come up organically, and you wind up saving me a lot of time. Usually, the script is just a little flipped over, is all. So.
Yeah. Well, my rambling does serve a purpose after a fashion.
Okay, so anyway, there's a heavy theme here, apparently, of leaving messages when we know we're about to die.
There's probably,
you
there's like a college essay in there about the messages of Constantine, because it's either it was an overt theme stated and restated of leaving messages from the other side, or it was just a happy coincidence. Hard to say sometimes whether these things are all deliberate or if it just worked out that way. If you've ever sat in a literature seminar and listened to people overanalyze a Hemingway book, I'm certain that people come up with meanings and shades of meaning that the author never intentionally put in there, because you can overall analyze anything. But the corollary to that is, and I may be using the term corollary wrong, in a Quentin Tarantino film, if you think you see something clever, he meant to do that, because Quentin Tarantino is not clever. So when you see what you think in Death Proof is an homage to Voices from a Distant Star, yes, it was, because that was not accidental. He did it on purpose.
Okay, noted. Which arguably every Tarantino film is just a collage of homages to other films.
Yeah.
In a way.
Tarantino he loves film. And so that expresses itself as, gosh, we're the 70s fun. Here's a whole bunch of stuff from there.
Right.
Mixed in with a few other things.
Yeah. except for what's the George Clooney, Salma Hayek vampire movie?
Well, From Dusk Till Dawn
Yeah,
was
yeah,
only
yeah.
it's half directed by Quentin Tarantino and
Oh,
half directed by Ramirez, his buddy.
yeah.
Uh, why
Anyway,
can't I?
I feel like that entire or his involvement in the film was about one scene that he wrote,
Or
and
Robert
then
Rodriguez
I don't know.
is the name? Is it Robert Rodriguez?
Yes, there you go. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. That's why that film, it feels like two different movies for that reason, because we start out, driving helpless women around in trunks because we're sociopaths, and then we're fighting vampires in a way that only Robert Rodriguez could guide you through. Like they're two very different movies.
Yeah. And if my morality seems, especially relating to that heaviest of topics that we talked about 20 minutes ago, if that seems a little too fast and loose with and not on par with Christianity, well, what did Jesus actually do? Well, he literally sacrificed himself, and he even said, "There's no greater love than this, than to
Oh, well,
sacrifice yourself for your." Okay, so there you go.
yeah, you can find Christ allegories in every. We've talked about several of them already. The Matrix is nothing if not a Christ allegory.
Okay,
To the
debatable,
point,
partially, yeah,
well,
especially
in the third film,
yeah,
they've
and
got him
he's
laid
even
out on the
dragging on.
cross,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and
You're right.
and, and he died to save them, and he'll come back one day. I mean, it doesn't get any more overt.
Yeah. Okay. So Papa, one of my favorite characters is Papa Midnight. Um, I was almost hoping for a Papa Midnight standalone film. I think he could pull that off, but I feel that neutrality. You'll probably disagree with. Well, I don't know. You might agree with this. Neutrality that's genuine, which is where you're up in a mountain somewhere and you do nothing but meditate all day, or you're a Papa Midnight type character, is, I think, a potentially very service to others path, uh, because it's completely devoid of desire or want to do anything, even help the good guys. So and I'm maybe hearkening to a Buddhist teaching, but the idea being you just are, and you're kind of devoid of desire, even the desire to do good. Well, I love how he's forced to take a side and see that John is, here's how. John is not just fighting for heaven or for himself, which he arguably is, to right his wrong, but he's at this point, he's literally just fighting for the world to keep spinning. It's no longer about John, it's no longer about serving the right, it's about everything must keep going, kind of. And that's what Midnight is all about. It's like, well, hey, do you want to still be able to be Mr. Neutral? Do you want
Yeah.
this game to keep going? Do you want there
Well,
to be a game board? Well, you might want to help me, bub.
Digimon Hansu is literally Bogart in Casablanca.
Yes,
That's all he is.
kind of.
It's
Yeah,
that same
I like
trope.
that.
This is, place of neutrality. There's no business on continental grounds. Highlanders can't fight on holy ground. It's the
Holy
same
ground. Yeah.
thing,
Uh-huh.
you know. Uh,
Okay, and us. Sorry, go ahead.
no, that was it.
Okay. But I love what I've already talked about is the layering within the frame, the foreground and the background of all these sort of redundant, the environment reflecting what's going on or foreshadowing what's about to happen. If there's more of it in this film than I have probably ever seen in a modern or early 2000s modern film. And so hats off to Francis Lawrence, because holy heck, man, the amount of detail.
It is starting to become a little painful when films that I think of as modern films are actually old enough to be classics.
Right, yeah. See, the 80s was 40 years ago,
Yeah,
almost.
the way that I relate to that now is they said if they made Back to the Future, Marty would be going to 1993, and that blew my mind. Like the
Man,
difference between 1993 and now is the difference between the 80s and 1950s America, and that's
yeah.
mind-boggling.
So with with the chair bit, to me, that's a, I'm not anti certain substances that increase your synapse activity, one of them being caffeine, because it doesn't hijack your brain or your spiritual processes or anything. It just increases the existing activity. What I don't dig is psychedelics, DMT, etc. There's a lot of people that have gone on those trips and they don't come back. It's the equivalent of you go to the gym, you pick up a 300-pound bar and you try and lift that sucker when you're me. And how do you think that? So some people are just fine, but a
Well,
lot of people are not.
it's
And
one thing to dilate your veins. It's another to see things that aren't there. That's the difference. On the one hand, I have to go poop now. On the other hand, look, monsters. There's a big difference.
and now we're getting into the stuff where me and Phil don't. And by the way, there's a lot of things I wish I could talk to you about, but I think, yeah, Phil would scoff at that, and that's kind of, I don't want to.
You don't, just as an aside, just because I scoff doesn't mean it can't be discussed. And if my knee-jerk reaction to something is to scoff, that doesn't mean I'm not open to entertaining the discussion anyway.
Okay, obviously, because you talk to me all the time, and
Well, one of the things I'm becoming more and more aware of is that I am a grumpy old man. And
okay,
that's just, it has become my new reality. And I don't know if that has to do with the fact that I'm over 50 now, but that said, it doesn't mean that I'm not capable of talking about the things that my knee-jerk reaction is, well, that's dumb,
yeah,
because I still acknowledge the possibility that I'm not right about everything. I like to think that the things that I believe I've thought through, but that doesn't mean I'm not open to be convinced. For example, right now there's this big debate about UFOs, which is really in line with the spirituality of Constantine and ghosts and the occult and things like that. It's the same category of some people believe, some people don't. I don't know if you can see it, but behind my head is a green baseball cap that has a Bigfoot figure on it. And it says, I believe. I don't believe that there are big feet, but I think it's fun to think that there could be.
okay.
So when it comes to like the UFOs, do I think we have aliens? And do I think the government is serious when it says, by the way, guys, there's aliens? No, there's not. Until I see some evidence, no, there's not. But that doesn't mean if I was presented with evidence that I would be like, I still don't believe it. Like I'm just waiting for somebody to actually prove it.
Yeah, see, that's what I love about you is that because I have seen you even, well, I don't want to say, see, okay. See, here's how I know, another reason I know you're not an ideologue is you're not so emotionally invested in any idea that you'll defend it if it's attacked. Or if you're presented with new information that goes against what you currently think, what you're going to do, like an adult, is you're going to look at the information or you're going to look at what's in front of you and adjust to whether or not you believe that. You're not going to immediately go, oh no, that's, and just shut down. You
I
actually,
like to hope.
yeah. Well, I've seen it over the course of what, like 10 years now. You have changed a whole lot. Like over the course of 6 months, you're constantly, which no offense to anyone over a certain age, but I have noticed that the more set in their ways people are, the less they're able to do that. And so it's always delightful when I see your opinion on everything that's going on. It actually changes. You don't hold this 1996 opinion of, like, and I'm sure you immediately think of some people like that. And so that's another reason I know you're not an ideologue. You have ideas and beliefs and principles, and you're able to integrate new knowledge through the filter of your principles rather than say, reject reality in.
Well, I like to hope so, but I mean, the reason I believe the things that I do believe is because I think those things correspond to reality. And sometimes reality hurts our feelings. So when we talk about like the morality of suicide in Constantine, we should be able to talk about that and not worry that somebody's going to be offended by the reality. The reality is people in real life kill themselves.
Yeah.
Constantine is a fantasy movie that places a moral framework over that, and that framework may or may not have any rooting in what's actually applicable to our lives. You could say, if you're a Catholic, it very much does. If you're not a Catholic, and if you're not a Christian, if you're an atheist, then you would say, well, that has no meaning to me whatsoever. But then the movie's a fantasy. Like, if your biggest problem with Constantine is that there's morality taken from Catholicism, why are you not also upset about the brainless aliens? It's the demons, rather. I guess same thing. The not costume design,
It's interesting that you said that, but go
the
ahead.
the creature build of
Okay.
the demons. And I'm aware that there are people who think demons and aliens are the same thing, but the creature build, you could take those brainless things, put them in a science fiction film, and they would work just as well as an
That's true.
alien race.
Yeah. I think of it of like, like the seat of the soul has been scooped out essentially, or the all of their conscious will, like they.
Well, I'm cheating a little bit because I read the Constantine novelization, and in the novelization, the author specifically mentioned the fact that they were brainless soldiers that merely did as they were
Oh,
instructed,
okay.
and they had no brain.
They're quite literally brainless. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Okay, so what I was getting at is that to me the chair is a metaphor for psychedelics, or utilizing something that's going to increase your ability to perceive the ether, or whatever you want to call it.
yeah,
But they should be used, in my opinion, as in a similar way, emergencies only.
under supervision.
Under supervision, yeah, but emergencies only. Or I like on Men Who Stare at Goats, when who played the dude on the movie, the other,
Isn't
not Men Who.
doesn't George Clooney star in that film?
Yeah, no, the dude, the character of the dude, the Big
Oh,
Lebowski,
yes.
that guy.
It'll come to me.
Anyway, he's
Jeff
in.
Bridges.
Yeah, yeah, Jeff. When he's teaching the New Earth Army with his feathers and stuff, he's at the board. The hallmarks of your best tools or something. He gets down to amphetamines, not to be abused, but very freaking handy. Anyway, that always comes to mind with. So I have a similar policy. Don't do drugs, kids, especially things that might. Hey, if you want to see some stuff, go meditate. Go, your choice. Go meditate. Go learn to meditate. You know what that does? It actually increases DMT in your brain naturally.
You don't want to open your mind to the point that your brain falls out.
Falls out. Thank you. Then you turn into one of those brainless things.
Exactly.
So coming full circle. By the way, folks, gold. When Shia is pouring on to make the rounds for the holy shotgun, gold does not melt that fast. You cannot achieve gold or even brass melting temperature on a stove. Brass melts at 972 Celsius.
It's funny that they do that, because when I think of gold bullets, I always think of the Mario Van Peebles Western Posse, where he also makes gold bullets, because they mention that if you want to kill your enemies in this world and the next, you need to kill them with gold.
Oh, wow.
So it's the same concept.
Makes note. Okay. Constantine is proof that if you're dedicated enough, you can lug around multiple drum magazines, and that you'll be thankful you had them if you ever actually need them.
Yeah, I picture some sort of like small of the back, like drum magazine fanny pack that he's wearing under his coat.
Yeah. The shotgun scene with he slides the chair in slow motion. It's the sprinklers are going. I think that's still a great scene as far as camera work. It's actually very low action on his part because he's got that shotgun.
Yeah.
But it's just, I think it's a great scene.
It's a very street sweeper vibe that
Yeah, it is. It is. It's the holy street sweeper. Yeah, yeah. And it's super cheesy. Obviously, because I'm saying it, that's redundant. It's super cheesy, but the rooftop ending scene is one of my favorite ending scenes, including the ending soundtrack Great soundtrack overall too, by the way, and the ambiance and all that. So go ahead. What?
I've never really been aware of the soundtrack of Constantine. It didn't make an impact on me in that way.
Could just be that I'm so music conscious that I'm always really paying attention to it. But
That's entirely possible. Like there are plenty of movie soundtracks. That's another thing. Like my early music collection, when I first started buying CDs, was full of soundtracks from movies. Probably because I want my life to be a scored movie. So I like soundtracks in general. And for whatever reason, Constantine didn't filter through to me the way that like the soundtrack from The Crow, which is an excellent
oh yeah,
album. There's many
Here is a
others.
great band. Yes.
And Tarantino, as not clever as he is, man, can that guy put together a soundtrack album? You know, even though he's basically just acting like a DJ and curating which songs that
Pretty
other
much.
people play.
Yeah, yeah. Mhm. Which okay, I maybe should just text this to you, but something I have always noticed, and I used to think it was just a stylistic choice, and it kind of echoes the all the cuts in Gabriel's final garb. But when she reveals, or when John reveals her, uh, and she comes down and lands on him for that last scene, her arms are just covered with patient tags that are just like um, Isabel's from the mental hospital.
Yeah.
What does that symbolize to you? Does that anything, or was it just a stylistic choice?
I I wondered if maybe it was mocking John with the fact that she was in the hospital. It could also be a nod to many, many other tormented souls who had also
Yeah,
chosen suicide because of similar problems. It isn't really clear, and nobody bothers to give you a hint as to
right.
what it's about. I tend to think it was just angel mockery because that angel is a dick.
Yes.
So
Ironically, because they're androgynous and yeah,
yeah. So I don't know if it's meant to be any deeper than that, but that's how I took it at the time.
yeah.
But if anything, it hints towards other victims.
Okay. Yeah, let's go with that. All right, folks. Well, this went well. If you like if you like Rachel Weisz, great performance. If you like Keanu Reeves, if you like high intensity and intensely personal films that are from the early 2000s,
Well, and
watch
also
Constantine.
Constantine is urban fantasy. So people who like urban fantasy, the idea of the
Okay, sure.
supernatural intersecting with our daily world, I think it's very appealing for that reason. Because
Yeah,
I think people long for there to be more than the mundane world. We look at the world around us and we're like, this is boring. I kind
yeah.
of wish there were monsters and demons and stuff.
And that's one of the themes of the film is that there's a world behind the world that is in fact that. And yeah,
Yeah.
so doesn't get more on the nose than that. All right. Well, thanks for doing this and have a good rest of the day.
You too.